So let's learn the basics of altitude sickness prevention. You probably already know that altitude sickness can potentially ruin your trekking adventure and be life-threatening. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 6 simple and essential rules that will help prevent altitude sickness, help you enjoy your trek and get home safely. Hey guys, Joe Bonington here from Joe's Basecamp, where we help people with the preparation, the training and the inspiration for people to have trekking, trail and mountain adventures. Now make sure you stick around to the end, where I'm going to show you how you can get hold of a copy of our popular complete guide to mountain illnesses, which has been endorsed by the likes of Bear Grylls amongst many others. Just want to make a quick disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, not trying to be a doctor, not pretending to be a doctor, etc. So whilst the information in this video is built on best practices, careful research, up-to-date research, don't consider it to be medical advice, and do go and check with a registered doctor, health professional on anything before you take on board any of this. Just got to get that one out of the way. Before we dive in, if you do like this content, and if you know somebody else who'd really like this content, please like, subscribe and share it with them as well. Rule number 1. So firstly, be able to know and recognize the symptoms. Know before you go to altitude what you're looking for. Today we're not going to be going in depth into the differences between AMS, which is acute mountain sickness, or HAPE, which is high altitude pulmonary edema, or HACE, which is high altitude cerebral edema. All I'm going to do is just go through the symptoms with you so that you can recognize them, and we're going to save the in-depth details for another video. So firstly, let's deal with acute mountain sickness. Headache, which is a common early symptom, nausea and vomiting, fatigue and weakness, dizziness or lightheadedness, loss of appetite, difficulty sleeping, and rapid heart rate, also known as tachycardia. High altitude pulmonary edema, HAPE. Severe shortness of breath, especially at rest. Rapid and shallow breathing. A cough, often producing a pink frothy sputum. Tightness in the chest. A rapid heartbeat, also known as tachycardia. Bluish or greyish skin, especially around the lips, around the nails and the nail beds, and also the tongue can go dark, tongue and gums can go dark as well. And lastly, fatigue and weakness. High altitude cerebral edema, known as HACE. A really severe headache that doesn't improve with painkillers. Confusion or disorientation. Difficulty walking or lack of coordination. Unusual changes in behaviour, such as aggression or lethargy. Hallucinations, nausea and vomiting, loss of consciousness or coma. So being able to recognise the symptoms either in yourself or in others, you're already well on your way to having a much safer trek. Now in the free ebook that I want to give you as well, we've actually got an assessment guide in there that can help you assess these very early on. So make sure you stick around to the end and I can show you how you can get that. Rule number 2, be as fit as you can be and ascend slowly. So what do I mean by that? So when it comes to altitude sickness prevention, the second rule is all about your fitness level and your pace. Because what we want to do, we want to be as fit as we possibly can be so that we're exerting ourselves less at altitude, but when we're up there, our pace wants to be slow. We want to be taking it easy. There's a direct correlation between level of exertion and AMS. And our pace in altitude gain wants to be slow and low. So what we want to do is aim for 300 to 500 at the very most gain in one day. And then I want you to schedule yourself an acclimatization day for roughly every 1,000 meters of height gained. So what do I mean by that? So you're going to walk, say for 3 days at roughly 300 meters height gain a day, and then you're going to have an acclimatization day. So an acclimatization day is a day where you spend 2 nights at the same height. It's not a rest day unless you're really badly fatigued. If you're really fatigued, then you do need to rest. But on an acclimatization day, what we're going to do, we are going to walk high that day and then come back down and sleep at the same level that we were at. But do remember, because I've just been talking about our level of exertion at altitude, if you are fatigued, you're actually better off just resting on that day. So just taking it easy, stay around the tea house or around the tent wherever you are, and then get an early night so that you're fully rested the next day. Rule number 3, stay hydrated. Managing your fluids at altitude is critical. You're in a very dry atmosphere. We dehydrate a lot quicker, and that can lead on to other things. Now, it might not directly relate to AMS, but being well hydrated could have a protective effect against AMS. The other thing that you want to think about as well is if you get dehydrated, you've got a very good chance of getting headaches. If I do get a headache at altitude, what I'll often do is I'll chug water first, chug about a litre of water. Now, if that goes well, wait it out, see if that has an effect. If it does have an effect, fantastic, carry on. If it doesn't have an effect, then what I'll do is I'll then take an ibuprofen and I'll just wait it out at that height until the symptoms subside before that I go let myself go any higher. Just an FYI for you as well, talk about fluid loss. When you're above 3,000 meters, you lose twice the amount of fluid than you would at sea level. So what you want to do is increase your water levels in generally by 1 to 1.5 litres. So you want to be having about 3 to 4 litres of water every day. You want to be aware of hyponatremia though, so do make sure that you put some electrolytes in there as well. Hyponatremia is where you drink too much water, plain water, and it washes all the sodium out of the system, and that can be very dangerous in its own right. Rule number 4, sleeping altitude. Now, I've touched on this before. Aim to sleep between 300 and 500 meters above your last sleep, and every 1,000 meters have 2 nights at the same height. For example, I'm at 3,000 meters. Even if I've got to go over a high pass at, say, 1,000 meters higher, so I'm going from 3,000 and the high pass is 4,000. When I come down the other side, I'll come all the way back down, so I'm only 300 to 500 meters above where I originally started. That's the important part. You only ever height gain 300 to 500 meters in a day, or sleeping height, because we can go higher, and at times it's good to go higher, and at times we've got to go over high passes, but we must come back down to that height to make it safe for us. So come up over the pass, might go up 1,000 meters, drop down until you're at least 500 or 300 meters above your original sleeping height from the night before. Rule number 5 involves monitoring your body for changes on a twice-a-day basis at least. It's a very simple thing to do, and it's very quick. And for this, I use the Lake Louise Score System. It's an invaluable tool, really simple to use and readily available. Now, it's evolved over the years. The latest version, which is the version that I use, has taken out all the sleep related questions. In actual fact, what they're seeing now is that we've got a lot more accurate diagnosis coming through. I'm going to run through how to use it at the end, and I'm actually going to give you access to your own copy as well. And finally, rule number 6, the use of medications. Medications can play a role in altitude sickness prevention, but please be aware they are not a get out of jail free card. The most common prophylactic meaning preventative, is acetazolamide, commonly known as Diamox. The standard dose for Diamox is 125 milligrams twice daily. Now, most of the Western pills are 250 mils, which makes it really handy. So just split it in half in the morning, half at night. If you're buying your Diamox in places like Kathmandu, often the dosage levels are a lot smaller, so then you have to end up taking a lot more tablets and messing around with the dosages a bit more. I'm going to go into Diamox in a lot greater detail on another video. But for the moment, especially if you're going to altitude for the first time and if you're on a fixed itinerary, i.e. going with a group, I'd really thoroughly recommend that you take it. Now, the other drug that's worth talking about is NSAIDs. So NSAIDs are ibuprofen, and there's a fair amount of research out there utilising those as a prophylactic as well. It must be worth noting that the studies do show that it is not as effective as Diamox. The standard dose for ibuprofen as a preventative for altitude illnesses is 600 milligrams 3 times daily. And like I said before, Remember, I'm not a doctor, so do consult with a health professional before taking any drugs. Avoid taking other forms of medications like strong painkillers and sleeping pills as well. Anything that depresses your rate of breathing is not a good thing to be taking at altitude. So I'm going to show you how you can get a lot more detail on all of these rules and much more related to altitude illnesses and altitude sickness at the end of the video. So make sure that you watch till the end. But first, let's just summarize what we've learned so far. 6 rules. First one, know and recognize the symptoms. Second rule, ascend slowly and be fit. Third rule, don't sleep any higher than 500 meters above your last night's rest. Fourth rule, stay hydrated. If you get a headache, chug water first. Fifth rule, monitor changes. Sixth rule, know what medications are available, know how to use them and when to take them. Remember, these rules will help you have a safer and more enjoyable trek. If you have the freedom, it's always better to go with a flexible itinerary. Because you don't know, when you're in a group, people travel at different paces, people adapt to the altitude at different paces. So if you possibly can, and I know not everybody can, but if you can go on a flexible itinerary, do try and do it. Bonus time. I said before that I wanted to show you how to use the Lake Louise scorecard, and I also wanted to give you access for free to my complete guide to altitude illnesses. Here we go, the modified Lake Louise score sheet. It's actually a lot simpler than it looks. We're going to focus, most of our time is going to be spent in this area here, which is the self-assessment, where we're looking at headaches, gastrointestinal, fatigue and weakness, and dizziness. So for example, it's in the afternoon, I've got into camp there, my sleeping altitude that night is going to be 3,000, my maximum altitude that day was 3,000. On the headache, you'll see here below, 0, none at all, 1 mild headache, 2 moderate headache, 3 severe incapacitating headache. I didn't have any. Gastrointestinal, good appetite, poor appetite, moderate appetite, severe incapacitating nausea and vomiting. Okay, so that was a 0. Fatigue and weakness, it goes through the same 0 to 3. That was a 0. Dizziness, lightheadedness, and that was a 0. So my self-assessment, the total was 0. Okay. And if I look down here at the bottom, so you'll see I've got a total assessment score of 0. And because of that, if you've got between 0 and 2, then you don't need to go any further. You're fine. Okay. We can just leave that. Now the next day, I'm going to be sleeping at 3,500 altitude. And my maximum height that day is actually the height I'm sleeping at. And this day I've got a 1 because I've got a mild headache. I've got a little bit of upset. No fatigue. No dizziness. And so that's a 2. I still don't need to do anything. Now the next day I go up the same. So we're sleeping at 4,000 meters. My height gain was 4,000 meters. I got a 1, I got a 1, I got a 1, I got a 0. So I've scored 3. Now I'm not traveling with anybody else. So I look at that and I say, okay, yeah, I might have altitude mountain sickness. I will take some ibuprofen. I will sleep overnight and see how it is in the morning. What I can also do is, if I'm traveling with somebody, or if I'm traveling in a party and there is a guide or a medic, or I've got a traveling partner, I'll go to the clinical part and I will ask somebody else, it can't be done by myself, to judge me on these. Do I have a change in mental status? And they would write in no change, lethargy or lassitude, stupor or coma. Okay. Then C2, ataxia, and that's getting them to walk on a straight line and see if they can hold balance, a bit like the American alcohol driving test. And peripheral edema, and this is, you can notice if somebody is suffering from altitude, from puffiness, etc. around the face. It's just one of the signs. They would score in those parts there. I'll be honest, 9 times out of 10, if you feel it necessary, that you need somebody else to score, you probably need to take it that you've got mild AMS and need to take appropriate action anyway, okay? But this is a really good safety measure. Anyway, we've ended up going up 1,000 meters in 3 days, which is about the limit before we have an acclimatization day. We're going to stay at that height. Now, the next morning when we wake up, let's just write an AM at the bottom there. We've got no headache, gastrointestinal has gone, we may be feeling a little bit of fatigue and weakness. So we're back down to a 1. And our friend says, no, we're fine. We decide that that day we're going to go for the acclimatization walk, feeling okay to do it. And we're just going to go 300 meters higher. This is still the 15th. This is the end of the day. So we're still at 4,000 meters, but we went to 4,300 meters. We didn't get a headache. Didn't get any gastro. Our fatigue and weakness seems to have disappeared. We're actually feeling quite good now that we've got some fresh air and we've gone a little bit higher and come back down again. We didn't overtax ourselves. We went really slowly. We've got no dizziness or lightheaded. So we're actually back down to a 0, okay? So we are now fine to go up again. So the next day, that's PM there, we're going to go up to 4,500 and sleep at 4,500. And it all starts all over again. I've actually got a little bit of a mild headache. My guts are okay. I'm possibly a little bit weak. I'm not dizzy or lightheaded. So that's a 2. The other section that you can use as well is the functional score, which is another personal score, and you can use that to rate yourself. So this is the effect on your activities that you feel any of the issues above is having. So say on this day where we scored a 3 and we went and saw Buddy and they actually scored that we were okay, so we've got a clinical score of 0, then we had a look down here and we actually had to think to ourselves, well, look, how has this been affecting us? How's it affected our activities? No effect on the activities, mild reduction on activities, moderate reduction on activities, severe reduction on activities. Well, in actual fact, yeah, maybe we did have, it had a moderate reduction on our activities. Maybe we were a lot slower than the rest of our party. We were really late to get in and we couldn't eat anything when we got in. So let's say that was a moderate reduction. There we go. We've got a total score now then of 5. So if we have a look at the bottom, so if we stick together the sum of all scores S, C and F, so that's self, clinical and functional, is 6 or higher. Seek appropriate treatment and do not ascend further. Now I've scored a 3 in this section. Now even though I've only scored a 5 overall, because I've scored a warning sign in the self-assessment area, then we defer to that one. Okay, so that means we still need to take appropriate action anyway. We should still rest up the next day. Take some ibuprofen, rest up, see how we feel the next morning before making any decision to go further. So let's go over the total scores. So if I've done a self-assessment score and it's 3 or higher, or if the sum of my total assessment score and my clinical score added together is 5 or higher, or if the sum of all the scores, that's the self-assessment, the clinical and the functional, is 6 or higher, seek appropriate treatment and do not ascend further if you have AMS. You've just got to make sure though that you do follow the advice that you see from this. This is just ones and noughts, and if you score a 3, don't second guess yourself. Treat yourself as, yep, It's a 3. There's a chance I've got AMS. It's better to err on the side of caution and take precautions. That means you must take another day's rest and monitor your symptoms, and you cannot go up again unless they get better. It is just not worth it. And if they don't improve, you must go down 300 meters. And there you have it, the modified Lake Louise score sheet. It literally takes 5 minutes at breakfast, 5 minutes at night at dinner, and that's it. You can also, if you're really gauging things as you're going, you can whip it out at lunchtime and do one again at lunchtime as well. If you've got any queries on this, please let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Word of warning though, if you have been given other drugs by a doctor such as dexamethasone because of your symptoms, this is excluding Diamox, this is other drugs, then you can't ascend. You've got to go down from that point. Now, I want to give you access to the Complete Guide to Altitude Illnesses ebook, and you'll actually find your copy of the Lake Louise Scoresheet System at the back of that book. And go to my website, the link is in the description below, and I want you to use this code, okay? So the code is SGB103H. That's SGB103H. Okay, now it's for a limited time. Don't forget to go to the link below, get your free copy of the guide, and then also subscribe and share this video. Get it out there, and I'll see you up in the mountains.